Hello, I'm Kentaro and I'll be proposing The Artist as Consumer by Boris Groys. Now, capitalism has gone through many revisions in the past. Production, or making things, and consumption are two axioms in which capitalism exists. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, belief in production over consumption has proven to be an economically unstable policy. It's interesting to note it was not an ethical reflection in which the world came to terms with this reality, but that of economic rationality. Now, basically, decadent consumption is better for the economy than, let's say, Protestant work ethic. Production cannot develop without demand from us consumers. Production is parasitically linked to consumption. Now, consumption linking to greed, which is then linked to personal desire, is no longer a truth. It is our responsibility to consume. It is best for our economy and our way of life. Buying is the message, not medium, buying. The role that consumption serves is reinforced by things such as fashion and latest consumer products, generally computers. And the idea that one must have the newest, or one is a social outcast, sort of reinforces conforming as loyalty. Now, Marcel Mauss has said that civilizations have always despised those who hoard their treasures. It's true. We all hate rich people. Even the rich people hate rich people. Today, the rich make up for their privilege through charities. Ronald McDonald House, for example. Ronald McDonald. And rich nations do the same thing through various organizations such as the World Bank and the IMF. Now, artists are set in a rather difficult position within this presented framework. It is generally regarded artists are producers for the art market, which is a part of the larger economy. There are two disadvantages highlighted by Bush. The artist cannot possibly, one of them is that the artist cannot possibly compete with consumption generated and mediated by fashion, advertising, and commercial design. The artist, as a genuine human producer, in contrast to the world of mechanical reproduction, has been disproven by post-structuralist theory. We're simply restricted by whatever medium we choose, be it language, wood, video. Artists are bracketed under social consumption, like every other producer. Historically speaking, this struggle for mass production was done over 100 years ago with the arts and craft movement and their struggles. Today, the artist has accepted these restraints placed upon our existence. Artists are, in fact, the model of shopping. Pop art drew from images of mass culture. Duchamp's urinal, ready-mades, has highlighted the role of the artist as shoppers, consumers, and nothing more. No artist would claim originality, since their argument can be proven to be irrational. Originality is so 125 years ago. Now, the signature of the artist is not that of a creator, but that of someone who used this object and made it interesting. This very fact has positioned us into a critical space. The producer simply produces, and the consumer criticizes the offering. The magazine Consumer Report being the North American self-claimed authority of consumer criticism. Market success is simply a form of criticism also. If something sucks, no one would buy it, hopefully. And by nature, the artist parallels this particular position of the consumer. Politically speaking, this criticism upon originality came from a different place than that of making the artist into a consumer. The historic avant-garde revealed the technical process, dethroning the notion of a lone genius or some sort of super being in an effort to equate themselves with the industrial worker, the proletariat. Groys obviously stays away from this word through implications of Marxism and whatnot. And to break down sort of the pretentious barriers that art has created in the last who knows how many years. The work of Silhouette, to take the author's fingerprints off the work, is a prime example. Those open cubes can be made by anybody, and that was his intention. This was further taken by media art, which has almost completely deleted the artist's presence. The equalization, or this idea to equalize with the industrial worker, has not yet occurred. Instead, the artist has distanced himself and the work into a voice of authority with no use value, but simply combining, assessing, deciding, and criticizing. The temporal economic theory of insight is cited as an explanation in this article. Traditionally, the production of the work of art has been slow in contrast to the consumption of it. The artist toiled in effort and work, and it was appreciated at a glance. So this basically brings the consumer to a position of superiority over the producer. This lack of materiality in recent art has put the artist on the same level as the consumer in terms of time and effort. So things that were made on a whim is worth more, basically. Now, also, it is interesting to note that the position of the museum has also changed in this landscape. It went from a place of hallowed ground of originality to an archive of strategies and insight to be retrieved for our consumption specifically. Now, before, paintings and sculptures could be consumed and taken home. But now, new works today are rather unsellable. Art has become an example of consumption for the other classes, much like the aristocrats once were. The artist has not only appropriated objects of mass culture, but also appropriated other social roles, that of a preacher to a sociologist. The progression of art is linked to the roles in which the artist plays. Now, Ritwik Tiruvanija's Pad Thai, he cooked food for art patrons, nothing else. In a way, the work itself, or the production of this work, has become consumption. Ancient works of art commonly do not have the name of the artist attached to them in museums. That is because the role of the artist was that of a servile class. Thus, what made an artwork into what it is the consumer, the sacred royal aristocrats that raised objects into art through purely their status. Now, such privileged position embodies the whole culture as basically the natural need of a human being is so limited that we must create new supernatural desires, superfluous, wasteful, in order for civilization to progress. Whereas the royal aristocrats find these new exquisite desires, and the artists fulfill these requests through their production. The fall of aristocracy during the French Revolution, which brought about an economy based on fulfillment of natural needs for the masses, quickly became an unrealistic model for modern economy. Artists and poets during the Romantic period developed extravagance and luxury, a refined high life consequently. The artist became the model for new forms of consumption. Perhaps a pseudo-aristocracy of society organized under economic principles. The exact opposite of this perspective would be to consider art of a The exact opposite of this perspective would be to consider art as a practice and cannot serve a leading role in consumption, since it is dictated by market forces. This lumps together fashion, commercial design into the realm of art. The one thing art has over the mass culture is the archive, or basically a long recorded history. This is a way in which the art sector can distinguish between the old and the new. The other sectors do not have this depth of hindsight. The value of art is heavily placed on this idea that it is new. Now, the archive keeps art from repeating itself, since new can only exist in relation to the old. Now, in fashion, the old stock is repeatedly moved off the shelf. This industry had a short memory. Now, the fashion sector can be seen as functioning. Now, wait a second. Yeah, the fashion sector could be seen as functioning on revivals. Oh. But this revival gives a sense of history. And to the average consumer, this sense of history would be largely irrelevant. The market as a place for innovation is proven to be wrong by the fact that the consumer consumes what pleases him, without a distinction between the old and the new. Now, this greatly separates fashion and art in that sense, since art, most of its value is placed on the fact that it is new in some way. Now, consumption also relies on an ending point, or death, a point in which everything becomes null. The history of art begins with death. Burial grounds, pyramids, and etc. art simultaneously consumes and archives consumption itself at the very same time. Art begins by archiving the disposable aspects of mass culture, i.e. Andy Warhol and his packages and containers, the Brillo pads and whatnot. This act of archiving gives a critical perspective. The artist not only consumes like everyone else, but produces new forms of critical perspective. The artist creates a new critical consumption. What does this do? I have no idea. Now, at this juncture, I would like to present my newest work, in which I take pretty much the whole of my existence into it. Now, this is an autobiographical work, so it relies on me telling you where I or what I am. And what it is my father, he works for the World Bank, and I'm on this sort of pseudo scholarship thing where the World Bank is paying for 75% of pretty much everything that I do here. So living costs, housing, tuition, even the tape on this video here. So what I'm gonna do is pretty much just reduce everything into a series of transactions in which I guess I'll control in a way. But it sort of goes along with this whole idea of art becoming consumption itself. What this whole essay is about, I guess, in a way. And what I'm proposing here is I take my World Bank Fund staff ATM card and bank account, and I allocate an extra $20 on it, I guess. Actually, just make a bank account with just $20 on it through the bank fund staff, and I'll give this card and this PIN number to a fellow Colombian artist that's in Toronto. And then then she would take this $20 and she will go to Kensington Market, the local independent local market, son of a bitch, and she would buy fair trade organic Colombia Supremo coffee beans. And then she will bring it back to me, in which place I'll take her fair trade organic Colombia Supremo. I think it's about $9.99 a pound. And I'll present it as my work. Right here. The merchant puts fair trade organic Colombian Supremo, and I simply added this handmade logo of the World Bank. Now, I don't have many critical comments to make on this essay. It covered most everything. And it definitely rings true to me. The idea of the genius is really just so outdated and stupid, in a way crippling. And once one notices, or once one frees themselves from this idea of originality, creativity, this whole romantic notion, the art begins, at least for me, in which it reminds me of what Lyotard said about the death of the author. The death of the author is exactly the point in which writing begins. You know, I like you guys to think about this piece that I proposed to you, and I guess this is really just my response to this essay. I'll have it recorded and I'll present this to you guys at one point in the semester. It doesn't take much to do. I guess in the end, the products of this performance will be I guess about 2 pounds of fair trade organic Colombian Sprimo and maybe the ATM card. I'm sorry I couldn't be in class today, and I must say this Cuban embargo cigar tastes wonderful. I don't know why, it's the sweet taste of trade. Kentaro Garcia Lopez. See you guys next Wednesday.